With the outbreak of COVID, it brought about the confines and the thoughts of bats. They were the primary reason and cause, supposedly, for COVID. Yet, if we really look into it, bats aren't necessarily the reasoning that COVID started. It was human intervention. Bats did carry the disease initially, supposedly. Yet, if humans hadn't been eating their brains or any part of them, this wouldn't have happened. Bats can be considered a disease-ridden creature, no more so than a possum, a raccoon, cats, dogs. All these animals can get rabies. They can get other diseases. They can get stuff that can be transmitted to humans, not only rabies, but they can get diseases that can also kill us as well. With this being said, we should look into some of the myths and things that we are told about bats that give them a really bad reputation, such as, bats are evil, considered to be vampires that only eat on our blood and should be considered a dangerous creature. That's not necessarily true. The only species that is known in this bat species that actually consumes blood to stay alive is the vampire bat. Although they're not a menace to humans, since they do actively avoid humans, they avoid all contact with us as much as they can. They primarily feast on livestock such as cows, pigs, horses, sometimes small birds such as pigeons, chickens, anything that they can get their little hands on. And we're not talking enough blood to actually do any harm to these animals other than maybe having a bacteria in their saliva, which actually helps the wound to close faster. They take a very minute amount per species that they bite into, just enough to keep them going and move them on through life. It's no different than us killing that pig and eating it, but the bacteria that's passed on to that pig will not harm us. It's mainly used to, in a sense, sterilize the wound and close it up. With that, we look into echolocation. Not all bats look the same. The flying fox is actually the biggest bat in the bat species, and the flying fox does not use echolocation at all. This bat actually has enormous eyes. They're massive, and they have very small ears. With these ears, they can hear normal things. Their hearing is a little subpar, but their vision is immaculate. It's used to find fruit. They're actually vegetarians who primarily eat on fruit. They can eat small amounts of vegetables, but they eat and live and consume fruit. The other type is an insectivore. The insectivores, 9 times out of 10, except for the common Asian ghost bat. The common Asian ghost bat actually crawls around on the ground. It's very minimal flight. He uses his massive ears just to hear prey scurrying, scratching, cracks and little leaves crinkling. They use this in order to crawl and creep up on their prey, and they initially, like a lion would, pounce and eat their prey that way. Now, echolocation is only used by bats that generally have smaller eyes. They have very massive ears. This sense of echolocation generally is used to keep them from hitting things such as trees, buildings, power lines, things that they could run into initially. But it also helps them to find things, because when echolocation is used, it is a subsonic screech emitted, and it causes a wavelength to come back to them so that they can hear things. Now, bats are also phenomenal mothers. They will stay with their baby, and they also have the longest gestational period for such a small animal. We're looking at rats would have maybe a month or two, sometimes a few weeks. But for an animal that's about the size of a rat, it stays pregnant for 7 months. During this time frame, you can actually see the baby moving inside of the mother. It's amazing to see that the mothers take such diligent care. Most of the time, it's the females that take care of their young. The males do not take much part in it. There are a few odd cases where it might be a more feminine bat that does help with the family kind of nature. But with this being said, we're looking at this as a misunderstanding. They've always been looked at as creepy, gross, disease-ridden, horrible animals that should be getting, completely wiped off the face of the earth. They have no need. They actually get rid of animals that could harm us, like mosquitoes. They can eat 7,000 mosquitoes in a hunt. This completely negates West Nile, other diseases that these animals that are actively trying to attack us carry. Like I said, bats will always try and avoid human contact as much as possible. They're more of a shy creature. With these facts in place, we have to come to think to ourselves, are bats really the problem, or have we just been misled this entire time and we need to relook at things that we are told? With that, at any point, you should always do information and research on things and not just take one person's opinion as complete fact.